Greetings, chess players, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Analyze That, the chess show where you get to be the star by emailing me a game and I analyze that game. Reminder, if you want to be featured in our show, all you have to do is join the Daily Chess Musings Club at chess.com. Then, if you have a game that you want featured, email that game to analyzethat@gmail.com. Once again, analyzethat@gmail.com. Also, be sure to check out our website, dailychessmusings.com, for thousands of free lessons, and make sure to like and subscribe to this video. Having said all of that, let's go ahead and get started. Our first game today comes from Aknarava and Suresh Kaval. And this game was played on chess.com. Let's check it out. White starts with pawn to d4, opening with the center pawn. Black plays knight f6, develops a nice piece. Bishop f4, interesting move order. Usually you would see 2 c4 or 2 knight f3. Black plays 2 e6. White plays e3, d5, and 4 bishop d3. Strange move order for white, but there is a setup. It's starting to look like a London shape, meaning a pawn on c3, a knight on f3, a knight on d2, and white castles kingside. It's called the London system. The London system can be used against almost all black openings and is thus a system of where white pieces should go rather than an opening dependent on specific variations. Black plays knight b to d7. White plays knight f3, so it really is starting to look like a London. Black plays b6, knight b to d2, bishop b7, queen e2, and black plays c5. This is a good move to play against the London because you're going for the extra space. Since white is going to only put their pawn on c3 to have one pawn in the center, black likes to push c5 early, so they have a little bit of extra space. They have 2 pawns side by side. White plays c3, and black plays c4. I prefer the less committing bishop e7 there, maybe. Because once you've played c4, that pawn can't ever go back. And as an occasional Londoner myself, I have played this kind of position many, many times. And I'm just really never afraid of my bishop going to c2. And even if they try and start something over here, on the queen side, I can fire back with e4, but my bishop going to c2 doesn't bug me at all, and it actually makes e4 a lot easier to play in. Let's see, in these variations. All right, so bishop c2, b5. So they are black is starting something on the queen side here. Nothing to worry about for white. White castles. So white has completed all 3 opening goals, and for review, those 3 opening goals are pawn in the center, castling, and unifying the rooks. The rooks can see each other. Let's see. Black plays a5, so investing a fair amount of time on the queen side. We'll see if that investment pays off later on. And white strikes back at the center with e4. In situations like these where your opponent is heavily investing in a flank attack, striking back at the center as white does here, makes perfect sense. And it also follows along with what we were discussing in the London system when your bishop is backed up to c2. Striking back with pawn e4 is a nice touch. All right. Dx e4, knight takes e4, and knight b6. 11, knight b6. That knight move feels a little awkward as black. I would prefer, let's see. I just don't like the knight going out there. I would prefer bishop e7. Then if white plays knight e5, probably that's what I would play is white, black can castle. And then maybe knight takes f6, knight takes f6, a4, and b4. Yeah, both of black's bishops have good purpose, and the king is safely castled. Let's go back to move 12. White had just played knight takes e4, and black responds with knight b6. And white plays 13, knight takes f6. And that is a really good move since black's queen cannot take back without being trapped on g5. I didn't even see that until right now. For example, if the queen goes here, boom, we've just won ourselves a queen. She can't return back, can't go there, can't step forward, can't step forward. We've won ourselves a queen for a minor piece. So yeah, that knight takes f6. That's a neat trap. Neat trap. I didn't even notice that at first. But see, I learn things in these episodes too. All right. So white plays knight takes f6, which is beautiful punishment, by the way, for that weird looking knight b6 move. Because if the knight was still on d7, it just takes back. And no problems. There's 13, knight takes f6. Oh dear. Black could end up losing their queen if white spots it. Let's see. Nope. White missed it. White missed it. Again, let me show you the neat move is bishop g5. And then maybe if I was black, I would play bishop takes f3 to try and get a trade of queens, right? Because then if queen takes bishop, queen takes queen, and then you don't lose material. But white can simply just play queen d2 here, and you've still got black's queen trapped on f6. So white missed the neat trap. Let's go back to 14, queen e3. So they played queen e3 rather than bishop g5, which they should have played. Always got to analyze your checks, captures, and threats. And bishop g5 is kind of a main threat, right? You're threatening a queen. So it makes sense to analyze. Knight d5. And since, here we go again, another theme we see often in these videos. When one side misses a winning move, oftentimes the other side can then go on the attack. And here, all of a sudden that knight that was on b6, which wasn't a good placement for the knight, allowed for all this trap of the queen over here. Now it goes to d5, and it's attacking the queen and the bishop. And so black takes the initiative. And white rightfully plays bishop g5. It's the only way to avoid losing a piece, right? It's the only way. Any other move I see for white there, and black's going to profit your bishop. Knight takes e3, and bishop takes, 16, bishop takes f6. Huge mistake. Huge mistake. I wonder if you guys at home see why that's a big mistake. You'll see it in a moment. But let's calling it a mistake. Let me go back and try and yeah. So we should after 15, knight takes e3. White should play 16 fx e3, and black's queen is still trapped, right? So then queen takes f3 is probably best for black. And then gx f3. and then black could play a4, which shuts down white's a4 counter strike. And then white could strike at the center with e4, has both center pawns, and black could play bishop d6, maybe, have two nice bishops. And both sides would have some advantages and disadvantages, but roughly equal. White controls the center, but we like black's minor pieces better. And black will have useful rooks after they castle. Very easy to get the other rook over into all this space and maybe create something over here on the queen side. And like I said, white is doing just fine and is currently controlling the center. So we've got advantages for both sides, but no real advantage, no winning advantage for either side. But that's not what happened. Let's go back. So after 15 nx e3 and bishop takes f6, which I said was a mistake, now black, let's see if they spot it. And they do. Knight takes f1 first, right? So now they're gaining extra material. Knight takes c2 would work just fine as well, right? It's a matter of taste here. I mean, you could just take the rook, or you could take the bishop and attack a rook. In fact, let's look at what happens had they done that real fast, just to be complete. So if, knight takes, I mean, of course you're going to save your rook, it's white. And then black could play gx f6, and then rook takes c2, then maybe bishop takes f3, and g takes f3, and then rook g8, and king would need to go to h1. And barring a major mistake, black's going to win from here. Barring a major mistake, black's going to win. First of all, the king is held prisoner, so can't fight in the endgame. Second of all, and maybe more important, yeah, definitely more important, is the fact that they have an extra bishop. And finally, the way black can play to win this seems fairly standard. They're going to be, moving their pawns forward and then trading the rooks. And again, their king can be active, and white's king is held subject to the corner. So it should be fairly elementary for black to win from there. So back to black's move 16, knight takes f1. Did not choose to take the bishop. I probably would have. And move 17, bishop takes g7. Bishop takes g7. 18, king takes f1. And then bishop takes f3. Black shows good technique by trading while material head into an easily winnable endgame. 19, gx f3, b4, cx b4, ax b4, bishop e4 attacking the rook. But black's not going to give away a rook for free. Rook a7, rook d1, rook takes a2, winning a pawn, getting to the 7th. Nice. d5, e5. And that looks just like a little bit like we're giving white some counter chances by allowing them to have this passed pawn, but our king is easily going to get in front of that pawn, and we're going to unleash this other rook. So I'm not too worried about that. d6, king d7, there goes the king, blockading the passed pawn. Bishop f5, check. King c6. So white's playing pretty good after they're down a piece, but that's the problem. They're down a rook, right? d7, rook d8, rook d2, and then pawn c3. Nice move, black. All those, I guess, those early investments in the queen side pawn moves that black did finally paid off right here. Rook 28, rook c2, rook takes b2, 29, rook takes b2, cx b2, king e1, rook takes d7, king e2, king c7, bishop d3, rook takes d3, king takes d3. Just very nice endgame technique for black, and it looks like white resigned there, in fact. And that's fine. Again, let me state it again. It was very nice endgame technique that black played, And white was just one mistake from being victorious, right? If we go back, let's go all the way back and show just how close this whole game was to just totally being different. If we go back to move 13 black, Hewitt takes f6. If on move 14, white had played bishop g5, white wins the game. One tactical mistake, and white would have easily won the game. And then the other main tactic in this one came at move 16. After nx e3, white played bishop takes f6, right? And then this knight could take the bishop or the rook, so black got extra material, and that's how they got the extra rook in the endgame. And again, after 15, knight takes e3, if white would have played fx e3, then queen takes f3, gx f3, a4, e4, bishop d6. We've got an equal but unbalanced endgame. But having said all of that, black won the game with they took the advantage, the extra rook for the endgame, and used a really precise endgame technique. So good game, very interesting by both players. Let's go to game number 2. So game number 2, we have a game between Andrew250 _ chess and Firebird73. So Andrew250 _ chess and Firebird73. Let's take a look at what these two players are presenting to us today. White plays e4, black plays e5, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3. White opts for the 4 knights rather than getting into the Russian game. If you want to learn more about the Russian game, you can look in our last. We had a really interesting Petrov defense game in our last episode of Analyze That. Knight c6, bishop c4. So we have an Italian 4 knights here, but that falls into the fork trick. Let's see if black knows the fork trick. And then if they do, I'll talk about it more, and if they don't, I'll talk about it more. Black plays g6. So black did not know the fork trick. Let's look at the fork trick real fast. This is fun stuff. You're going to like this. If you've never seen the fork trick, all right. So if there's a pawn on e4, a bishop on c4, and a knight on c3, oftentimes you can, but no pawn on d3, right? And then it's not going to work. Oftentimes you can do this neat move. Knight takes e4, followed by knight takes e4, followed by d5. There's our fork. Now you know why it's called the fork trick. Then after bishop takes d5, queen can take d5, knight goes back to c3 to save itself, but also attack the queen. And then the queen can, I like to just go back to d8 with my queen in this position, not fool around. And black has a pawn in the center. White does not. And that is a major advantage in the opening, right? One of our opening goals is maintaining a center pawn. And black was able to maintain the center pawn by way of the fork trick. So let's look at let's go back and look at. All right, so for knight takes e4, here comes some of the fun stuff that I've learned over the years about the fork trick. Sometimes white will play bishop takes f7 here, and this can be fun. King takes f7, and then knight takes e5 check. Then black can play, of course, knight takes e5. Then white can play queen h5 check. Then black could play g6. And then white could play queen takes e5. Then black could play knight takes c3. And, I remember a game, actually. I remember a game where they didn't take my knight. They decided to take my rook. I played this many years ago. I think 2004, maybe. White decided to take my rook. and I played queen e7. That's a nice check. And then queen blocked. Queen takes e5. King went to f1, and then queen goes to e2. King g1, and then I played checkmate. So that was a nice game that I played back in 2004. However, after 4 knight takes e4, and then we were looking at bishop takes f7, and king takes f7, of course. Knight takes e5, check. And then black plays knight takes e5. That's right. Queen h5, check. Black could play g6, and queen takes e5. After black plays knight takes c3, white doesn't need to take this rook, like my student did against me in 2004. Instead, they could try queen takes c3, in which case I like queen e7, check for black here, and then king f1 and bishop g7, attacking the queen. Black is looking good. Black is looking good in this variation as well. So the fork trick is sound. The fork trick is sound. And if white tries to add the extra tactics into it, with the bishop sacrifice on f7, their position's even worse. It's just, if you fall for the fork trick, just allow black to have that extra pawn in the center. Don't try and... Sometimes when we realize we've made a mistake, we double down to make up for the mistake. And in this case, that doubling down occurs right here with the bishop takes f7 move, right? And that's just adding more problems. Because now you've just, not only did you fall for the fork trick, but you sacrificed a piece in an unsound, manner. So you've actually added to your mistakes. So that's a lot of what I know about the fork trick. I could probably talk about the fork trick for a whole half hour, and maybe it'll be a topic for an upcoming show. So now that we've learned about the fork trick, let's go back to the actual game, which did not contain the fork trick, but had the possibility for it. E4, E5, 2 knight F3, 2 knight F6, 3 knight C3, 3 knight C6, 4 bishop C4, 4 G6, and white castles. Yeah, it's a fine move. I probably would have played knight G5, because it's kind of like a fried liver style attack, which could be fun. And then black would obviously play d5 and then ex d5, so on and so forth. It's more aggressive. But white castled, and that's fine. Black puts the bishop in the house. Bishop g7, 6 d3, 6 castle, 7 bishop g5. White is developing smoothly, and now threatening to pop the knight to d5 here, right? And black plays h6. Good for black, seeing this potential problem of the knight going to d5 with this knight being pinned. Good for them. They're trying to take care of that problem, send the bishop away. And in fact, I think I remember, yeah, I do. I actually was in a game in this position as well, long time ago, maybe 2002, I want to say. In the Bakersfield area of California. And my opponent didn't play h6, but played d6. And then I did play the knight d5, because I can. Knight goes to the outpost. This can't take without losing the queen. And my opponent played bishop g4. And then I played h3, which kind of forces this trade, right? Unless they want to retreat. So bishop takes, queen takes, and now I have 3 things attacking f6, which is pinned. But they attack my queen right away. And this is where, this is one of the games I was kind of more proud of that year, I played queen takes f6. Bam! And then bishop took f6, bishop took f6, attacking their queen, so they got to move their queen. Queen goes to d7, and then knight e7. Bam! And the only way out of checkmate is to then take the knight. And then rook went to f8, bishop went back to f6, and I was a solid piece up. But I was really, really proud of that queen sacrificing the queen for the knight on f6 in that variation, so I thought I would show it to you. But in our game, after 7 bishop g5, black played 7 h6. So white never had a chance to try that, but it's good. It's good to see these things. 8 bishop e3. Could have also just played bishop takes f6, right? I mean, I guess if bishop takes f6, then what? Maybe queen takes f6, and then you pop your knight up here. And then the queen has to go back to defend, right? And that's fine. Or if bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, and then our knight can go to d5, and their bishop goes to g7, and that's fine as well. So we didn't need to necessarily retreat there, but it's an okay move. So back to 8 bishop e3. There's d6, 8 d6. And white plays 9 a3. That's kind of a slow move that lacks purpose. Having said that, what would I do instead? Let's see. I would play queen d2, because then we've accomplished our 3 opening goals. We've got a pawn in the center, our rooks are unified, and we're castled. And we are also threatening h6. We've got a battery. So I would have played queen d2 to complete those 3 goals and add a threat, right? Okay, so white played the slow 9 a3, and black plays h5. I really think black should be developing this bishop on c8 rather than scooting a pawn forward here. But let's see what they have in mind. White plays b4, 10 b4, and black plays 10 b6. So getting the bishop in the game with one move would have been bishop g4, right? And black is spending extra time, after spending extra time over here, extra time to get the bishop into a fianchetto on the other side, when they're down in development anyways. So yeah, I think when you're down in development, you want to get your pieces developed to equally as good of spots. Equally as good as a bishop pinning a knight is a bishop on a long diagonal, and catch up on development faster. So for example, after white played 10 b4, what I'm saying is we could have played bishop g4 here. And even if they play h3, maybe Firebird didn't want to play bishop g4 because he didn't want to trade the bishop here, but it's really not that bad. Bishop takes, queen takes, because then you get knight d4, and that works, right? Yeah. Because then bishop takes, and then pawn takes, and then knight d5, and then knight takes, boy, lots of trades here. Then probably bishop takes is white, threatening down that way, and then black doesn't like that, so they send the bishop away, c6, and then black could play queen f6. And that should equalize for black. I think black's got some things to like about this position, especially the way things are developing along the a1 h8 diagonal. Especially the way things could. Yeah, I mean, even if queens trade, if white wants to get rid of this pesky pawn, they're opening up the whole diagonal for a bishop. So let's get back to the game. After 10 b4, black played 10 b6, which is again, a very slow way of catching up in development. White plays bishop a2. Not sure what white's intention is here. But let's see. Yeah, bishop a2. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I think more natural is just knight d5. Knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, and then bishop b7. And that seems fine and a more natural way of doing things. But maybe white has a plan that I'm not seeing quite yet. That certainly is possible. 11 bishop a2, and black plays 11 knight g4. And black appears to be looking to get rid of white's bishop pair. Wants to trade that knight for that bishop, so they have the bishop pair in the endgame. And white plays h3, so I guess they're okay with losing their bishop pair. I wouldn't be. Maybe better. Let's see what we can do here. Bishop g5, and then if they play bishop f6, we could either trade there, but I would probably go back bishop d2, and then they could go back bishop g7, right? And then we could come back out and get a draw if we wanted to draw. But if we didn't want to draw, by repetition, we could play knight d5, knight d4, and then knight takes d4, ex d4, and then h3, because the knight can no longer take our bishop because it's not on e3, and we still have our bishop pair as white. So I would have probably tried to maintain that bishop pair for the endgame that this kind of pawn structure would normally create. That would definitely favor a bishop pair over a bishop and a knight. Back to our game. White played 12 h3. And black played 12 knight f6. That's interesting. As I mentioned before, I mean, get rid of the bishop pair. Get rid of white's bishop pair. Knight takes, f takes. You could play bishop e6, bishop takes e6, fx e6, opening up your rook more, queen d2, and then bishop h6 actually looks pretty good here because you're putting the bishop on the same diagonal as the queen, and the pawn would be helping to push pawn to d4. So black would be just fine in that position. So, all right, after 12 h3 and 12 knight f6, 13 bishop g5, there comes that pin again, and black did kind of ask for it. Black did kind of ask for it because he had a chance to take that bishop. Black plays 13 knight d4, 14 knight takes d4, ex d4, then knight d5. And now there's that adding of the more pressure to the pin. This is a theme we've talked about a couple times already, a possibility we talked about. And again, black could have prevented this, but is still okay because white is putting pressure on this pin, but can't quite cash in yet because black also has two defenders. c6, good move by black. Let's kick that knight away. Knight f4. Smart play by white, not exchanging on f6 since it's pinned. Why help black out? Let's keep this pin. Let's keep this pin alive. Black plays queen c7, c4. And it's important to always analyze all the checks, captures, and threats. Once you run through this process, you can see that knight takes g6 is actually the best move. And this is something that is commonly missed by chess players. You got to look at what's pinning what to what. So our bishop on a2 is pinning the pawn on f7 to the king on g8. So if we play knight takes g6, maybe the best black could do is rook d8. But now this knight is pinned, right? And then queen f3. Now we have two attackers on the pinned knight, and black could play d5, which at least gets rid of this pin on f7, but we could play bishop takes, queen takes, of course, f takes, and then what would I do here? Ex d5, yeah, that's what I would do. Ex d5. Black could play the tricky rook takes d6, attacking our queen. And then we could simply play cx d6, check, right? They can't take our queen if we're checking them. And then when the king goes to h7, there we go. Queen h4 is probably the best move for white. And I really like white's position here. We're definitely winning. And you get these kinds of positions when you analyze all checks, captures, and threats. And white, right here, missed the fact that the knight can take on g6 because the pawn on f7 is pinned by the bishop on a2. So c4, blocking their own pin, by the way. Blocking their own pin. And that's sad. dx-c3. And obviously black missed it because black missed the threat as well because they just reopened the pin. Queen goes to c1. And again, knight takes g6 just would have been a lot better there, right? I mean, again, you have knight takes g6, maybe rook d8, and then queen f3. And then black could play d5, much similar to the last variation we looked at with that. But white played 18 queen c1. Knight h7, 18 knight h7. Both sides keep missing the key pin here. Queen takes c3. And that is a huge mistake. Because the bishop should just take the queen now. Right, Andrew? You just gave him a queen, and instead you actually still had knight takes g6. Yeah, they can play knight takes g5, but you've got queen takes g5. Rook e8, f4, bishop e6, bishop takes e6, rook takes e6, f5, rook goes back to e8, maybe f6, fx g6 maybe for black here. Queen takes g6, keeping that pin. Queen f7, trying to exchange things. And we'll actually do that. Queen takes f7, sure. King takes f7, because then we get f takes g7, check, king takes g7, and then rook a to c1. And white is up a pawn in the endgame. White's up a pawn in the endgame when that combination all plays out. So if white had seen the knight takes g6 move, even this late into the game, I believe they would have been up a pawn in the endgame. However, they didn't see it, and not only did they not spot the best move, they played 19 qxc3, which is not a good move. That is a huge mistake. And then bishop takes queen, of course, exact punishments for the mistake. Rook a c1. White's trying to get some attacks, but black should be able to win easily. Let's see what happens. Bishop e5. Maybe just take the bishop on g5 there, but that's okay. Bishop h6, attacking the rook. Bishop g7. Bishop g5. 22 knight takes g5. 23 knight d5. Queen d7. Knight e3. Bishop b7. Bishop b3. And that's move 25, bishop e3. For those of you keeping track at home, 25, c5, 26, bxc5, bxc5, rook f to e1, bishop h6, bishop d5, Bishop takes d5, and trading pieces is just a winning recipe when you're ahead of queen, right? Ex d5, rook a to e8, rook e2, knight takes h3. That's a nice move. I like that move. G takes h3, queen takes h3, knight g2, rook takes e2, king f1, rook f e8, rook e1, and then rook takes e1, checkmate. Nice technique by black when they were ahead of queen. But of course, it's not hard to win when you're ahead of an entire queen. The main ideas you want to get from this lesson, this game, is missing tactics involving the pin on f7. Beyond that, both players would be wise to review what I talked about early on with the tactics and ideas in the fork trick. So all in all, very interesting game, and thank you for submitting it. Let's go to game number 3. And now we have game number 3. It comes to us, Ryan play chess 360 was white, and Nabia, Nabhya 26 was black. So Ryan play chess 360, Nabia 26. Let's see what you guys got for us. e4, e5, both sides start with center pawn, knight f3, knight c6, 3 bishop c4, 3 bishop c5, the Italian game. For castle, white could have played c3, pawn c3 or pawn d3 there. Knight f6, knight g5. I'm not a fan of this kind of move. I see it often in scholastic games because the fried liver ideas don't work. You're attacking the belly button twice, once with the knight, once with the bishop, but black can just castle because their bishop's already on c5. So if their bishop's still on f8, yeah, go ahead and try it. If their bishop's come out already, don't, because this ends up being wasted time then. Castle, good for black. Knight c3, d6, d3, let's move 7, d3, and white's one step behind. Check it out. White's one step behind in black just played d6 before white played d3, right? Why is that? Because white wasted time with the early knight g5 move. Bishop g4, and black keeps developing and developing with a check this time. So white needs to either move the queen or retreat the retreating the knight would be bad. Yeah, moving the queen's actually better. A queen 1, good for them. Here comes knight d4 with an extra piece developed. Black's already improving his knight with threats of some forks over here, right? Knight takes c2, forking. And white plays bishop e3, and black plays bishop e6. That's a big mistake. I mean, why not just play knight takes c2, Nabia, right? And then queen goes to d2, and then maybe bishop takes e3, then fx e3, right? And then knight takes a1. Look at that. And rook takes a1. So you've managed to trade a knight for a rook. So that would be a lot better than 9 bishop e6, especially because after 10 knight takes e6. You know what I just noticed is it would be actually better. I think it would behoove white to play 10 bishop takes d4 here. And then after ex d4, then knight takes e6. Then after fx e6, then bishop takes e6, king has to go to h8. And then I'd probably save my knight attack as bishop, knight a4, bishop b6, and then knight takes b6, ax b6, and white's looking good. White's looking good. And I like that better because then getting back to the move that was played in the game, which after black's mistake of 9 bishop e6, white plays knight takes e6. Black's knight can return and capture, right? And in the variation I just showed you, you get rid of that first. So you're able to force the king to the corner and other stuff. All right, moving on. 10 knight e6, fx e6. And again, I think knight takes e6 would be better because it's attacking c5. And let's see, bishop takes d4, ex d4, and 12, knight b5. You just have to analyze all checks, captures, and threats. If you do, you're going to find moves like bishop takes e6, right? And then king h8, and then, yeah. But you just won this pawn. You just win that pawn for free by analyzing checks, captures, and threats. It doesn't always have to be a big tactical combination that you're going to spot by analyzing all your checks, captures, and threats. Sometimes it's just winning free material. So 12, knight b5, d5. That's a good move. I like that move. So it grabs the initiative and kind of punishes white's last inaccuracy by grabbing the initiative there. 13 ex d5, 14 bishop b3, rook e8. Good, keeping the initiative. A good job, Nabia. You're running with the initiative now. Queen d1, c6, continuing to force white to run away. Knight a3, b5, a5. a5 looks like it's going to be part of a good bishop trap. So you were close, because if you play a5, you're threatening a4, right, and b5, and then the bishop's trap. But even if they play c3 to create that square, then you can play dx c3, and now they can't capture back because they'll lose the knight there, right? So a5 I like better than 16 b5. Let's see what happens. 17 c3, and there is no need to react with the pawn move here. Best was probably just get the knight off a3, because I just showed you why that's a problem. And once the knight's off a3, it can go, maybe to b1, to d2, and to f3. Let me go ahead, talking in terms of like 4 knight moves in a row, I might as well show you. After b5, white played 17 c3, but they could have played 17 knight b1. And then bishop d6 probably is black I like, and then knight d2. Then queen c7, creating this kind of threat here, but that's okay. We've got knight f3. And then they could play a5, trying to do some kind of trap on our bishop out there that we talked about, and then we just play a3, and you're fine. So you got that knight off the lousy a3 square and got it over to f3, and you're doing fine. But you played, Ryan, you played 17 c3, and black played b4. And black's missing the dx c3 idea here. Dx c3. They cannot take back, because if they take back, they lose their knight, right? So you got to look at your checks, captures, and threats. But Nabia played 17 b4. And then 18 cx b4, 18 bishop takes b4, 19 knight c2, 19 bishop d6. Black saves the bishop, but misses an opportunity to also save the pawn on d4, simply by playing bishop c5, right? White could play bishop a4, attacking that, but then black could just play queen b6, and they don't lose a pawn. But when they played 19 bishop d6, that allows Ryan to play knight takes d4, And now white has some compensation for their poorly placed pieces. They got a pawn. Rook c8. And black didn't want to lose another pawn willy-nilly, so rook c8 makes sense. Bishop a4, threatening the pawn, a second attacker. c5. Moving the attacked pawn ahead works better when it isn't pinned to a piece. Right, Nabia? When you move this forward, make sure you aren't going to lose a rook to a bishop afterwards. So bishop takes e8, knight takes e8, knight e6, makes sense, 23, queen b6, saving the queen, knight g5. That knight is in a dangerous location for black's king. Queen takes b2, and then 25, rook b1, attacking the queen, but missing. See, this is what you gain from a lot of experience. When I have a knight on g5 and already a king that's missing one of the main 3 pawns, guarding it behind the castle, I look for attacking moves like this. Queen g4, threatening the rook, right? But also putting the queen in the same file as our opponent's king. So black, what should they do here? Maybe queen b7, right? If they play queen b7, then we have queen e6, check, of course, right? King h8, and then we've got knight f7, right? And then king goes back to g8. This is nasty. Then we could do a couple things here. We could play knight takes bishop, check, or we could get fancy, play knight h6, king h8, and then queen g8 checkmate. Let's look at some other variations in that, because I don't think it's a surefire win for white, leading to checkmate in all variations, but it's certainly an improvement over the rook b1. So after queen takes b2, instead of playing rook b1, again, queen g4 puts queen in the same file as your opponent's king and threatens the rook. And now I guess we could have black try queen f6 instead of queen b7. So go ahead and take my rook. I get your knight kind of idea. Let's see what happens. Queen takes rook. Queen takes knight. And then I could play rook ae1, threatening that again. And then they could play queen f4, threatening down there, but that doesn't work because, yeah, rook takes, right? And then bishop goes back and blocks, has to, rook takes, queen takes, king takes, and white's ahead of rook. So the queen g4 move seems just crushing. It seems just crushing. After queen takes b2, white should play queen g4 and just win the game. But after 24 queen takes b2, white played 25 rook b1, so black still got chances. Queen takes a2, rook e1, 26 rook e1. Again, I think those queen g4 ideas are good, and even if you don't see queen g4, maybe if you're looking at your checks, captures, and threats, you spot qh5, and you might say, well, black can protect h7. Yeah, but we've got f7, right? And then king would have to go to h8, and then you could go here attacking the rook. When the rook saves itself, then you got knight f7 check. King goes back to g8, knight h6 check. King can't go there because it gets checkmate. It has to go back to h8. And then you got queen to g8. And again, king can't take because the knight's here. So rook would have to take. And then knight f7. Another nifty smothered mate. Good reason to know your smothered mates. I did a nice episode on smothered mates. Go ahead and check out our series called checking time. And you'll learn to spot these attacking patterns in your own chess games. If you go through the checking time episodes and you analyze all your checks, captures, and threats, you spot these, Ryan. So make sure you do that. Back to our game, 26 rook e1, h6, trying to send the knight away. The knight does go away, 27 knight f3. But I suppose black could have even still, 27. Queen g4 is still threatening the rook. And then even if they defend the rook, you've got this check again. Remember, we looked at this kind of geometry already. And then the king has to go here. And then, queen takes, rook takes, rook takes, bishop blocks, and rook takes. And another neat checkmate. Again, you learn these patterns by going and studying our checking time video. So, Ryan, you missed another one. Let's see. 27 knight f3, 27 bishop f8, queen b3. Rather than trading queens right away, white could skewer the queen to the a7 pawn with rook a1, right? So right here, you could have just moved your rook over to a1 and get a rook to the 7th rank, win a pawn. But you played, Ryan played 28 queen b3, 28 qx b3, rook takes b3, c4, dx c4, dx c4, rook c3, bishop b4. Black sees a tactic and executes it. Nicely done, Nabia. Rook takes e8. It's odd looking, but that's the best move, Ryan. Good for you for spotting that. Rook takes e8, rook takes c4, and bishop a5. And now we're actually seeing that I would prefer to be black. Black's got this dangerous, all material is equal, but black's got this dangerous a-pawn that's far away from this king being able to blockade it. A passed a-pawn, outside passed pawn. So we saw numerous examples of how Ryan could have put Nabia away. He could have won the game with those queen g4, queen h5 attacks. Missed those, and now all of a sudden Nabia has a nice position. Rook a4, bishop b6. It really should be a draw with perfect play. But again, Nabia, I would rather be black. h4, that's 35 h4, 35 king f7. 36, rook f4 check, king g6, rook g4 check, king h7, h5, rook e2. Nice endgame tactic. Check it out. Attacking the pinned pawn twice. And white needs to play actually knight d4. It's the only way to avoid losing some material here. Let's see what they do. Nope, they play rook b4. Let me show you. Ryan, you could have played knight d4. And then even if rook e1, you got king h2. And even if rook e5, this is still unpleasant, but you have king g3. And then if I'm black, I'd start scooting that pawn right there. Because the further it gets up the board, the more threatening it's going to be, black. The further it gets up the board, the more threatening it's going to be. But white played 39 rook b4. Bishop takes f2 check, king f1, rook c2. I think rook a2 makes more sense because then you're in the same file as your pawn, giving it some extra protection. Rook e4, bishop b6, rook e8. Let's see if black starts moving this pawn soon, I hope. White wants to get his rook behind that pawn, which is why he sent it down to e8. Rook a2, and missing, I guess, rook f2 check, right? Yeah, if king goes here, then you got boom, right, and you're going to win this. And if king goes here to e1, why, then you just get the other pawn. So black, you could have won an extra pawn for sure there, rather than play 42 rook a2. Yeah, 42 rook f2 check wins a pawn. 43 knight e5. Now rook f2 check, king g1. Huge mistake. Huge mistake, Ryan. The king had to go to e1 to avoid the devastating discovered check. Boom. There's a check. And you're going to lose a rook. There it is. King h2, rook takes e8. And now winning should be fairly elementary for black, but we'll watch the end of the game. 46, knight d7, rook e1. 47, knight takes b6, ax b6. Now it's even more elementary. g4, b5, king g2, b4, king f2, rook e5, king f3, king g8, f4, rook c5, king e4, b3, d4, b2, king x c5, we don't care, b1 is a queen, king c4, king f7. Let's see how we... I don't need to call all the moves out here. Let's just see how we finish things up. 2 queens. And checkmate. Nicely done, both players. Thank you for sending this game. Ryan, you had plenty of chances to win that game. Make sure you spend some time watching the Checking Time series. And also during your games, analyze all checks, captures, and threats. And Nabia, that was a fun game. After, I think the key point for you is after 9 bishop e3, you played 9 bishop e6. Instead of bishop e6, you could have just played knight takes c2, forking the queen and rook. Easily winning, but you missed it. So you got to analyze your checks, captures, and threats too. Nice game, both players. Thank you to everybody who sent in games during the last week. I appreciate, and I don't get a chance to go through all the games on camera on YouTube. But I do go through all the games that you email me, and I enjoy that. Remember to like and subscribe. If you liked Analyze That, like and subscribe to the Daily Chess Musings YouTube channel. Check out dailychessmusings.com for thousands of free chess lessons. And join our club, Daily Chess Musings, on chess.com. So you go to chess.com, find the club, Daily Chess Musings, click join. Then when you play games, you can email them to me at analyzethat@gmail.com. And I will analyze that game on this show. Once again, this YouTube series is called Analyze That. I have been your host, Chris Torres. Remember to like and subscribe. See you next week.